Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today where we continue our Inner Harmony series, a six-part series. And today is session number 6, Living a Life of Consciousness and Compassion. With a speaker today, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. I have got Kelly helping out in managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome back to another episode of Success Sadhana.
Thank you so much, Jai Madhava, and great to see everybody. Thank you very much for joining. Today, we can start off with a brief meditation because there's always an opportunity when we're humans to take a minute to be more aware of our own existence. That's a good starting place. There are ways in which the wisdom literatures describe how I can be externally focused and constantly aware of my life situation, which is an ongoing concern, don't you think? And there's never a time in which there's not several concerns lined up. And then I'm dragged along with this idea that if I can just fill in enough gaps, then I may feel whole. Whereas the ancient system of meditation, dhyan, means to, in one aspect, become aware of one's wholeness. That's our nature. We have a nature which is non-perishable. In and of itself, that's a source of solace because everything around us perishes. I'm always amazed at how quickly things fall apart. For instance, maintaining a house, there's a sense of how hinges rust, how bugs eat the house. They think it's a snack. Well, I mean, it's their mainstay. So, and no matter how much you keep up with the things in your life, there's a way that they either slip away or they become deteriorated in due course of time. They enter back into the collection of other material elements. For instance, if there's a fire, those structures that seem to be iconic and important, and they are, suddenly then become smoke, and they enter back into the elements and get merged into it. Earthquakes shake us up, and there are all kinds of ways in which my external focus brings me this sense of anxiety. So what about an internal focus? Says the Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, or potentially Muni in the Yoga Sutras. Have you tried that? Well, yes, but have you tried it regularly? And have you tried it in such a way that you've come to sense that your nature is solid and that you have a connection with an infallible source? This is called yoga. Yoga means connection with our source. And of course, what we call yoga now with the various asanas, which are highly recommended for those who want to feel comfortable in their own skin. There's a way in which they're meant to help us. They're an aid to helping us be supple enough and comfortable enough to sit and look within for a little while. Oftentimes when we sit down to look within and to think about our source, the mind says, yes, but after you finish filling the gaps in your day for your life situation. Whereas the concept of sadhana or spiritual practice is, first, I practice looking inwardly, and I base that on the theory that everything expands from the subtle level to the gross level, and that all my external environment is a reflection of what I have inside. So best to start there, get the foundation laid, then move outwardly from there. All that's an explanation why I'm about to launch into a session of contemplation. So many words we can call it: meditation, contemplation, introspection. They're all basically the same thing. Just become aware, more aware, be conscious. Shall we try it after that super long preface to a little short practice we can do together? Okay, Linda's in as usual. Thank you, Linda. Thanks, Kaylee. Thanks, Manu. Thumbs up. They make me feel so good. Pradeep, thank you. They're legal in Canada too, by the way. If somebody sends you a contract idea and you send them back an emoji like that, it'll hold up in court that you signed it. So I take these things very seriously. So let's start changing the sound vibration. I was just listening this morning, which is one of the practices that I'll mention near the end, under the category of do try this at home. How many times have you heard somebody said, don't try this at home? Well, I have a list at the end that says, do try this at home. If you want to change your home and you want to change how you feel in your home and how you feel about what's going to be like when you step out of your home, there's some practices that we should try at home. So here we go. Yes, and I was going to mention that I was listening this morning to a talk, and it was given by my teacher back in 1975. And he was recounting this philosophy of Sankhya from the Vedas, which talks about how things manifest in this world, as I already mentioned, from subtle to gross. And then he talked about a parallel between the spiritual Vedic teachings and physics. And there's a way in which in physics, sound vibration is an integral part of creation. All the particles in the universe have a vibration. And one of the mainstays of the teachings of the Vedas is that if you change the vibration in your life deliberately, then your environment will change around you. It's actually physically true as well. And so taking some time to change the soundscape of your life will make a big difference. It's one of the main teachings of yoga and meditation, is to change the sound vibration. In any case, I'm going to put on some music after I just said that. And I'm going to change over to live performance. If something weird happens, JM, when I change this very unpredictable Zoom technology, let me know.
I can. Hopefully others can too.
So now let me go, JM, to the slide number 1. I'll go through a few concepts today of our topic. Of course, it's inner harmony. That sounds appealing to me. And the first aspect is that philosophy without application is mental speculation. You can go to the next slide. And the Bhagavad Gita says that spiritual practice must be directly experienced. It's called pratyaksha. So there are many different ideas, philosophies, and so forth, and they may sound interesting, compelling, and so forth, but unless there's an entry to them in our lives, as complicated as our lives may be, we may not live even in an ideal setting. Ideal means something natural. I visited Japan, visit every year, but years ago, my friend, who seemed to have this kind of a penchant for living in idyllic surroundings, and I stayed there. It was in the middle of a tea field. They grow a lot of tea there, and there was a stream running past it, and this little wooden Japanese house was there right on next to the stream. It was something out of a Zen YouTube video for meditation, his very house. And it was just really nice to wake up there before the sun, right next to the stream, and I was with a friend to do our mantra meditation early in the morning as the sun coming up. We would do that together, and then notice that the world was illuminated by the sun. Everything looks like a miracle when you're in that kind of consciousness. However, we may not live in something like that. We may live in an apartment where you can hear noises coming through the wall, or we have to live in an environment where there's traffic and so forth. But the Bhagavad Gita is not impractical. It says there's ways in which we can practice spiritually no matter where we are, whatever environment we're in. And furthermore, to the point, it must be experienced directly. And show the next slide, Jim, because I'll give an example that I've always found so simple and clear that I come back to it again and again. It's the one right after this that says, from the Srimad Bhagavatam, when we eat a good meal, we directly feel satisfaction, nourishment, and eradication of hunger. Similarly, when we connect to our source, we directly experience happiness, and we naturally abandon unwanted habits. It's one of the verses that describe or compares a spiritual practice, finding inner harmony, to eating. I want to see what you all think of this example. If you're ever hungry and you have a good meal, there's nothing actually that will satisfy us when we're hungry, right? Other than a good meal. You could say, well, why don't we read a book? Or how about let's go for a walk? How about not? Let's have lunch. There's a kind of way that our mind becomes really focused. Let's have something nice to eat. So then in the eating process, this ancient verse says, we feel nourishment, satisfaction, and the hunger goes away. I'm always interested how I know that I'm hungry and how I know that I don't want any more. Have you ever had somebody there putting some more food on your plate, like some dishing out some salad or something like that, and they say, okay, you say when. I was like, I actually know when to say when. I can judge that. We directly perceive how to satisfy our hunger, and we feel nourished, satisfied, and the hunger goes away with every morsel that we eat, or it diminishes until we're not hungry anymore. So isn't this just such a practical example? So according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the essentialized teachings of bhakti, says that when we have this experience directly, which everyone's not only entitled to, but it's not that far away, it just means to not ignore it. Don't be in ignorance or ignorance. Just turn towards it and become aware of it. And there are different ways of doing that. And that's what the practice of yoga is, or bhakti is. Just employ these methods so you see the connection and acknowledge it. Then you'll feel that you're being nourished directly, spiritually. And you also, that one of the proofs that you're getting satisfied when you eat is you don't want any more, right? If you're feeding somebody at your house and you really want them to eat and feel satisfied, isn't it nice? You give them enough and they finally say, okay, I'm defeated. I can't take any more. And then you can say, okay, I satisfied my guest. And when we, according to this ancient teaching, when we feel this connection to our source, there's a way in which the petty things in our lives go away. Someone just sent me a statistic the other day about how a whole generation is being lost to distraction. And it has to do specifically with screen time. Some people, they can't even do their work properly, what to speak of studies, because they're addicted to looking at a screen. And I mean, that's something a lot of people can relate to. If you look at any waiting lounge at an airport, you'll see that 99.9%, maybe even babies. I saw when I was waiting for a flight last Thursday or Wednesday or whenever we left, we were walking, there was a baby going around in a perambulator, and it was holding a screen and could hear little cartoons going on, and the parent was pushing along. So anyway, there's a way in which we can really get into some mind habits that are not satisfying us, like eating a good meal. Like if you go to somebody's house, they invite you over for lunch and you're starving. Have you ever had this? You go to somebody's house, you're really hungry, and you're thinking, oh, good, I'm going to have a meal. And then they never bring it out. That's probably never happened to you, but maybe if they delayed for a long time, it's like, oh yeah, we're late in cooking. You just sit there. They go, no, anything but that. I'm hungry now. But if they were moving around the kitchen and so forth, and maybe they brought you a little bubbly water with some lime in it or something, and then they never brought you anything else. And then you're thinking, are we going to eat or not? And it never comes, just the promise of it. So that's another one of the metaphors that's there in the ancient wisdom literatures. The way I try to get filled up in the world by looking at a screen or any other kind of tactile experience I have in this world, it comes and goes. It's ephemeral. And Kennedy said, maybe not at a friend's house, but it's happened at a couple of restaurants. Yeah, maybe California cuisine, and they brought you like one pea in the middle of a big plate. I never go to somebody's house hungry. Really, Gidget, I have the opposite thing, because I visit Asians' homes sometimes, and in Indian culture, like you go there, you're expected to eat. So I make sure.
I do.
Really
I go.
Oh, you do go hungry.
I do go to homes. I go to. They have the end of a festival that they have where they don't eat, and I go to that, but I don't go hungry.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Never go any place
You never.
hungry,
I see.
because then you become greedy and you eat too much, and then they say, I'm never going to invite her. She eats up everything.
In other words, you eat them out of house and home, and
because I'm hungry.
Yeah.
So never go to anyone, even if you know you're going there to eat. You just never are. I'm never hungry when I go.
That's another way. I'm going to think of it like that, because I probably have put a few people out of business by going there and being too hungry. Nice point, Gidget. Thanks a lot. So anyway, JM, Yeah. This idea is pratyaksha. It means that there are simple spiritual practices through which we feel naturally fulfilled. Now, I'll finish this point, and that is that when you're full, you don't want any more. So there's a sense of fullness that one would get for this inner harmony that comes from spiritual practice, which has a lot to do with alignment with our real nature. And when we have that, then there's a way in which a lot of the useless habits, which are like eating empty calories, they're no longer appealing. That's the only sure way that one gives up habits. And it's also indicative of a real spiritual practice, that ultimately one gets what's called param drishva. Drishva in Sanskrit means to see something or experience it for oneself. And param means that it's better. It's a higher taste. Param actually means the topmost. And so when we get a spiritual experience, then we actually feel naturally that the other kinds of habits we might have had, where we were whiling away our time in various ways, that those are no longer really interesting to us. And it's not that we're holding back or we're deliberately trying to avoid them. They're just not appealing anymore. So we get fulfilled. Okay, I'll do one or two more slides because I have a few slides here today. And then I'm inviting discussion, which means any thoughts you have related to this topic as we go forward, please either put them in the chat or just speak up or raise your hand and speak up, either way. So this is another practical point, and it's given in an ancient book. This is from the Upanishads, which are thousands and thousands of years old. They're in Sanskrit, which is arguably the most refined language in the world. Those who have studied Latin know that it's an inflected language. The nuances of the way verbs and nouns are treated within each word are beautifully done. But those who knew Latin and discovered Sanskrit in the past have said, oh, this far surpasses. So this culture in which the language, it's indicative of a culture which is highly refined. And the Upanishads take these concepts that are especially healthy for us and that lead to our happiness, and then they put them in pithy sentences. So this one comes from a Sanskrit verse which goes vidyam cha yas tad vedo bayam saha avidyayam ratum tirva vidyayam ratum ashnute. And I just paraphrased it. And what it says is that when we cultivate higher consciousness, it's especially effective when it's juxtaposed with our performance of our material obligatory duties. Does anybody here have any obligatory duties that they have to do that seem mundane? Mundane means they're just related to your everyday survival of your body and your mind. Anybody here? Or are you all retired and living in a cave somewhere? Even if you live in a cave, you still got to go out for fruits and roots and see your other fellow yogis on high mountain peaks. Okay, I'm getting Janet, thank you very much. Prajesh. Okay, Manatim, Vicky. Shankari has her hand up and ready to go. Now we finally get some human interaction. Please go right ahead.
I was really thinking about the last sentence that juxtaposed with our material duties. That's really important because, as you were just mentioning, that it's not possible not to do stuff, but maintaining our consciousness aligned with our source, that really gives that inner strength to go through everything that we want to do. Sometimes if we are not aligned that way, things may look overwhelming, but when we are really connected and aligned to the source and we understand that what's the purpose behind it, then doing those things become far more easier, and it comes very easy. They flow very easily too. So I feel that it just gives that that inner strength and stability to go through all those duties.
Oh, thank you for your realization, Shankari. A friend of mine calls that enlightened engagement with the world. And the word juxtapose, kind of a nice word. It's helpful in many cases. To place or deal with close together for contrasting effect. And it comes from, as you may have guessed, French from Latin, juxtaposer. Juxta means next to something, and poser means to place. So when you place something next to something else for contrast, that's when it's juxtaposed. And the verse that I gave is rather encouraging, because oftentimes I may think, well, I live in such a hectic place, or I'm engaged, I have so many things I have to do. This ancient Upanishad wisdom statement says, well, don't worry about that. It's actually an enhancement. When you get to experience conscious living through your practice directly, while you're in an environment that requires external focus and interaction with a world that is perhaps chaotic, or at least it's ever-changing, there's a way that you get more realization about the difference between the two types of energy. It's like a backdrop to a beautiful jewel really helps it to stand out. If you just take a valuable diamond out and you put it on top of a glass case that is pretty much the same color, you don't really see the diamond pop out. But if you put a piece of black velvet down and then you put the diamond on it, then you'll notice, ooh, that has many more facets than I had thought, and it's quite a beautiful color. So juxtaposing. Kennedy.
Hare Krishna. Can you guys hear me? I'm using headphones, so I'm not sure.
I can hear you. I had to turn mine up a couple clicks, but you're clear enough. It just needed a little more volume.
Okay. I have a question, because in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it defines success, a sense of success, as being able to alter your desires towards a more spiritual path. And you had mentioned in your last slide with cultivating higher consciousness, being able to juxtapose it with one's material obligatory duties is even more successful. So at what point do we know if, this desire we have, if this material experience that we need to have or want to have, at what point are we appeasing ourselves, and at what point are we actually doing something beneficial to our spiritual growth?
One of the answers that's given in the wisdom literatures is by looking at our own motive. And I may have spoken about this last week, or maybe it was on another show, but the ways that the legal system, the way that the legal system operates, as an example, is an investigation of motive. What was your intention behind doing whatever you did? And if it was wholly unintentional, unintentioned, what you did, if it was something bad, then it's not considered so bad because you didn't mean to do it. But if you did it intentionally, it's considered evil, and you're severely punished for it. So you have to go to Ace Hardware or Home Depot. They may have these. There's a little meter that you can connect to your index finger, and then it can judge your intention. No, I'm just kidding. You can't do it mechanically. It's a metaphysical consideration. What is my motive? So the first test is, what's your intention? Why are you doing something? Because everybody has to work. Everyone has to move. We can't stop moving. That's one of the main themes of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna, who's the hero of the story, wants to quit his job because he said it's inconvenient right now. It's not working out the way I wanted it to. And Krishna says, no, you can't do that, because even if you quit now, you're going to come back to it later, but you're going to lose all your stature from your job. He said, better do your job, but do it with a different intention, offer it as service. So while we're mixing it up with the world, Krishna says, live like a lotus, change your intention. And when you use whatever you have, whatever paraphernalia you have, you see, how can this be used in service to my source? And when it's used like that, then it changes its quality, amazingly. This is one of the statements in the Bhagavad Gita that says, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir, Brahmagno Brahmanohutam, Brahmaiva Tena Kantavya, Brahma Karma Samadhina. A lot of Brahma's in there. So it's saying that things become spiritualized by the way you use them. Everything is connected to our original source. And if you use it in service to the source, which is called yoga, then that material thing is no longer material. And an example that my teacher used to give is an iron rod. If you take that and you place it in fire and you leave it, then it becomes hotter and hotter, and then it becomes red hot. So how do you judge your own motive? Well, it's helpful to live in the association of those who also have high-minded ideals and can help us by their association. It's also good to compare the way we think and live and desire from some of the high-minded ideas in these wisdom literatures. And then we also have to be honest and sincere. Sincerity means when we come to a point of admitting whatever situation we're in. And there's no disqualification for practicing spiritual life. Doesn't matter where you start from. It just depends on your own desire. And I would then put it, your own sincere desire to move forward from there. Sincerity is ironclad. And that's an interesting topic, what sincerity actually is. We have to, that's part of our consciousness, and become aware of what is my own motive? Why am I doing this? So spiritual life is a lot of inner work, really looking at our own motives and why we're moving, why we're doing certain things in the world. And there is a way of adjusting that. Hey, we got something from Linda, JM. That's good news.
Yeah, Linda says, intentional living is the art of making our own choices before others' choices make us. Quote from Richie Norton.
Oh, that's amazing. Thanks, Linda. I love that, because it just related to something I heard the other day about karma. It's being impelled now by actions that we've done in the past. In other words, I'm being pushed to go in a certain direction right now, if anybody can relate to that, because of the momentum of my activities, the momentum created by previous activities. And intentional living means to come to a higher level of intelligence. This is called vivek. And vivek actually means discrimination. There is a way in which one's intelligence can become sharpened so much by the practice of yoga, and which means intentionality. I'm aware of it, so that I make very conscious choices and realize I'm not being impelled or pushed to do them because of bad choices I've made in the past. And I'm not attracted to doing the wrong things that people suggest that I do. That was helpful. Thank you very much, Linda. KJ, I'm burning around the track here. If it's a 440, I'm 3/4 of the way around. Okay, so next one is the directive to cultivate. I love the word cultivate because it relates to gardening. Cultivate, to practice with the aim of acquiring or developing a quality, sentiment, or skill. It's so exciting to be human, isn't it? We can at any time, any age, in any circumstance, decide to cultivate the human spirit and come to a higher level. All you need is knowledge and practice. Yeah, go ahead. The next one is about cultivating mindfulness as advertised in the original slide for this program today. So mindfulness cultivation. First of all, and here are a few, hopefully they're philosophical, but they're starting to edge towards the practical. Be the instrument of action, do not own or covet the result. That sounds so contrary to my normal way of thinking. It's like, why would I do something without getting the result? Like, it's the very reason I do it in the first place. And so when we hear just be an instrument of the action, don't claim ownership over the result. What? How could that be? Well, if we take a couple steps back and realize that our actions are not our own in a way. We desire, but then the material nature carries it out. And this is a little metaphysical, but the point is, we're not our bodies. If I want to move my arm, and you can see that I'm doing it right now, I'm thinking about it. But if my arm stops working, like I just when I was away on the weekend, when I fell asleep at night, my hand was like this. And when I woke up in the middle of the night, my hand was stuck. And in my half sleeping condition, I thought, well, that's it. I don't have a hand anymore. It's just going to be stuck like this. And then, but at any time, if by the arrangement of nature, my hand doesn't work, I can say, come here, hand, pick that up, and it won't go. It's nice to realize that whatever I'm doing through this body, using this body as an instrument, although I desire, it has to be carried out by other higher powers. It's not completely up to me. So the body itself is a vessel, it's a machine, it's a robot, it's an instrument of action. And how I use it, that's key, as we were just discussing. But then the other part is don't own or covet the result. Doesn't necessarily belong to me. When I try to control the result, then I try to keep it. Okay, JM, another one came in on the chat.
Next one is Yan has said, focusing on what is instead of what should be can reduce stress and frustration.
Yes, that's the next one. Let's bring it up there. I'm deeply grateful to Yan for bringing me to the next point. So that point, be mindful of the difference between what should be and what is. I mentioned this last week, I think, or the week before. I got this in an email from a colleague, and I really like it. I can notice in my own way of thinking that, oh, that should have been like this, or that should have come to me. That person should have said this. I should have done that. This word should, if I notice it popping up over and over again, I'm in a slight bit of anxiety that things aren't lining up for me the way they should. But if I go to this other word, is, it's one of the to be verses. It just is. That's the way it is right now. And I'm accepting, and I notice it. That's the way it is. This is part of mindfulness. Don't focus on or just see the difference between what should be and what is. And if I lean into what is right now, that's what's happening. Don't worry about what it should be exactly. Just notice that is the situation right now. This creates a sense of detachment from the result. And the second one is to be a witness. Stay aloof from your body and mind and see that they go on without you. This is something you can do at any time, just by taking a break and noticing how your breath goes on. You can't stop it. And all the functions of your body are going on. And in the Bhagavad Gita, there's this long verse that starts off, Naiva kinchit koromiti yukto manyeti tat vivit pashyan shrinvan shvasan jigran ashnan gachnan shvapan shvasan. These are all descriptions of the things the body does, like seeing, picking up things, tasting them, moving about, digesting food. And it says that a self-realized person notices that these things are going on automatically, and I'm the witness of them. I'm aloof from them. So these are three ideas of mindfulness that can be gone into and actually practiced. And Sundar posted a question. Questions are so nice, aren't they? Go ahead, Jam. Let's hear what Sundar's question is.
Sundar is asking, what is the difference between purifying the mind versus staying aloof from the mind?
Wow. Well, as usual, Sundar is going for the very subtle and the nuanced answers. So let's talk first about purifying the mind. Purifying the mind and staying aloof from the mind. It parallels various ideas about spiritual paths. I'll start there and I'll try to be brief. So one path in life is to notice that the world's frustrating. We already agreed on that, I think, right? The world can be frustrating. And then that some people take the path of renunciation. I renounce the world and I say that I'm not going to touch it at all. I did that as a kid. I figured it out. I said, I don't like the world. I'm going to renounce it. So I got rid of everything, except for a few little items that I had to have for school. And that idea of just giving up the world, not touching it at all, according to the wisdom literatures, is untenable. What's more, it doesn't necessarily make sense. It's untenable because we can't maintain it. You have to use something. And it's also not perfectly aligned because the things aren't ours in the first place. And to give them up would be synonymous to walking into the Bank of America and saying that I renounce this bank. It's not yours. So you don't have the right to renounce it. And so then the next path, which is the path of what's called elevationism, I try to use everything in my power in the material world to get a better situation. Wherever I am now, I try to move to a better place. I try to improve everything materially and surround myself with the best situation. But the best laid plans in the material world are epically known to be unsuccessful. Just read the poem by Shelley called Ozymandias about the great emperor who made everybody shiver with fear. But then the poet Shelley, who apparently visited some place and he saw the visage of this great emperor who commanded so many people as a broken down statue in the desert, which was sand blown and then had deteriorated. And then the third path is the path of connecting everything to our original source. That's called yoga or bhakti yoga or karma yoga. And so the difference is we purify the mind by using it intentionally in service to our source. And when we do that, the mind becomes purified because our source is pure. And then the mind becomes connected to that. And then our intentions become purified. And if you ever meet somebody whose intentions are pure, you just feel it. It's a natural fire-like feeling that, wow, this person, they're not trying to exploit me. They actually want to do good because they're connected in purpose with service. And the difference between that and staying aloof from the mind, staying aloof is more towards this idea of renunciation. And I only bring it up, this idea of aloofness, for this idea of introspection. Get an idea, a starting point to see that actually we're inhabiting a body, we're not the body. I can forget about that, as I said in the very beginning, not just because I said it, it's important, but it's a concept I'm taking from the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and that is that we are not the body or the mind. And having a preliminary understanding of that is very helpful then in moving forward. JM, we got another one from Linda. It's a banner day here on the chat box, I must say.
Linda is saying, the present moment is all we have, but my mind sure makes it hard sometimes to stay there.
Oh boy, does it ever. That's one of the main points in the Bhagavad Gita when Krishna is talking in the 6th chapter about dhyan, which means meditation. Arjuna says, forget it. I can't do this. And Krishna said, don't worry. There are gradual ways to bring this about. It's not that you have to go to a cave, Arjuna, because Arjuna was a warrior. He didn't want to go to a cave and meditate. There are ways of integrating this idea that Sundar brought up about purifying the mind into your work. If you work in a corporate environment, for instance, and you just change your intention for your work and you're offering the result of that for service and so forth, then you start to get that purification of mind and the mind becomes purified. JM, you better take me to a couple more slides because there's a few more concepts here as advertised. I better present them or else. Could
So
be
let me share my screen.
could be lawsuits, false advertising.
So speaking of
Go ahead.
Speaking of advertisement, we did advertise that we will get to. Speaking of advertisement, we did advertise that we'll get together at the end of the course to celebrate being part of this journey to upgrade our consciousness. So quite a few people have, as part of their registration, they said they would like to be part of it. So do expect an invite going out soon where we'll get together. And next is we do have a meetup today at Palo Alto. For those who are able to make it, who are in the Bay Area, please do join. Next stop, the Mantra Zone at Palo Alto intersection San Antonio and El Camino. So we'll start at 6:30 with a dinner followed by mantra music and wisdom discussion. So please register at bhakticommunity.com/meetup-palo-alto. So thanks for that opportunity. With that, I'll quickly go through where we were. Yes.
Yeah, I think if you search the world, you're not going to find many places better than Palo Alto. But within Palo Alto, the Mantra Zone is the best place. Definitely. Okay, a few more points about inner harmony. And this relates to the previous slide. I believe we may have missed one. Did we? Yes. Cultivate compassion. Compassion, concern for the suffering or misfortune of others. This is actually a thing. It's in the Bhagavad Gita. Atma pamyena sarvatra samam pashyati Arjuna. Atma pamyena means to have empathy or compassion for others based on the fact, and let's turn to the next slide. I love using cliches and hopefully explicating them in meaningful ways. We're all in the same boat. Everyone's heard that so many times. That's what makes it cliche. It's been beaten to death. We're all in the same boat, but think about it. What does that mean? We're all in the boat. If it has a leak in it, we're all going down together. And we're all in the same situation. It doesn't matter if you're slightly better off materially than somebody else in a way, because ultimately, we're all going through the same cycle. Youth, and then we grow up, and then we age, and then we have to leave the body. And we all, even if you're, for instance, I keep using this idea of having material opulence or wealth, you can still, if you have an ulcer or something like that, and you can still only eat 2 pieces of toast, even if you have $1 billion. It's not based on this idea that you have something more in this world. And so we can remember that we're all in the same boat. Others are suffering just like we are. And also remembering that every living being has a past, either glorious or infamous. And more importantly, seeing the potential in every living being, because a conscious entity can always rise in due course of time with proper association, knowledge, and practice. So that's something that keeps us in a sense of connectedness and purposeful connectedness with other living beings, that we're just in the same boat they are. And also everyone can rise in due course of time. And this is the vision of a person with a spiritual heart. Say they want to do good for others. So how can I help? So ethics, we also mentioned ethics in the advertisement for this, and moral principles. I just like to make this point because I love it. They're all metaphysical. I sort of jokingly talked about getting a meter from Ace Hardware or Home Depot to measure your sense of moral principles, but it's not measurable on that level. Physically, it's not physical. Therefore, it's metaphysical. Meta means beyond. It's beyond the physical. The ideas of morals, ethics, moral and ethical principles. Let's look at a few of them as we go to the next slide. Aristotle, for instance, talked about how virtue is a practice, not merely a theory. So justice, where do you get justice from? It's a metaphysical principle. In fact, when you study law, I took a class in law once and I thought, wow, this is sociology. It's really what our basic principles are in society, how we judge other people and so forth. What about charity? Why would you give to somebody else? If we're just all surviving here in a way of like everyone's evolving and the only thing it's based on is how we survive, why in the world would you give charity to someone else? I'm sure there's a witty answer somewhere, but just on the face of it, the idea of charity, generosity, it doesn't, you can make it utilitarian, but these, Aristotle says, are these virtues are beyond the mundane. They actually come from a spiritual platform. So that's also mentioned in the Vedas. And the Vedas definition is the wisest, most ethical person is the one who truly respects all beings based on seeing their mutual connection to our source. And finally, the last slide. Do try this at home. And don't quit your day job either. So meditate with mantra. It's the perfect way of creating inner harmony because music, rhythm, sound vibration is what connects us to the higher realms, according to the Vedas. And the mantra is a portable way in which you can bring that sound vibration to bear in your life at any time. And if you deliberately sit down and practice mantra meditation, which is repeating the mantra and hearing it, for instance, we've done Rama, we've done the Hare Krishna mantra, we've done Nitai Gauranga in this before. The results will be just like when you eat food when you're hungry, you'll feel direct connection. No explanation needed when somebody feeds you. You go like, yeah, that works. Another one is dedicate service to our source. Dedicated, I should have said dedicated service to our source. But there's a way in which whatever we're doing, switch your motive and do it as service, or practice doing service on the side where you can fully dedicate yourself. Do some selfless service, and you'll notice that's a direct connection. That's something that will immediately connect you. And thirdly, hearing from wisdom literatures. There's a way that the sound vibration that guides us has been codified and put into words. In fact, for many years, it wasn't written down. It was just passed down through oral tradition. Then there was a great personality named Dvaipayana Vyasadeva who made sure that it got written down for posterity. And as it has been, then there's a way in which written word, which is abstracted language, can then be reproduced, like just add water. There you have it. So when you bring out the wisdom literatures and you hear them, this creates what I mentioned before called vivek. It gives a discriminatory power to your intelligence, which isn't there through scrolling, I guarantee you. And this also, it transforms our heart and connects us through higher vibrations, which are coming through this wisdom literature. So those are three very practical tips, aren't they? Practice mantra meditation, Do selfless service. Find a place where you can do service, where you're not expecting any result at all. Yeah, and then the third one is to hear from wisdom literatures. There you have it. Well, it's 101. I almost made it in time. JM, thanks for keeping the lights on. I'm deeply grateful for everyone who joined today. It's been really a nice experience. And is this a long weekend? Yep. Monday's Labor Day. So I hope you all have a really nice weekend. You know, as I was saying that, I was remembering that the yogis high in the Himalayas, they don't really keep calendars. One day's the same as the next in some ways. They do notice the change of seasons, but one thing's for sure, they do come out of their caves because they collect fruits and roots on the high peaks of the Himalayas. And every once in a while, they'll notice a colleague of theirs who also has come out of the cave. And there's a very encouraging ritual they have. Looks like Rashmi's just put it up there. It says Hari Bol. And then they call out this phrase, Hari Bol, which means keep your practice going, keep the vibration going, keep doing this. And they put their hands in the air like this, and they call out really, it opens up the solar plexus, so you can say it really loud. Let's try it. Hari Bol.
Haribol!
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 Thanks, everybody.
Haribol!
See you soon.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Hare Krishna.